She wasn't his first pick for Attorney General.
Such a nice person.
But Pam Bondi was always a Trump loyalist. One of the first cabinet members confirmed by the Senate she was a MAGA favourite, mainly because of her stated commitment to release all the Jeffrey Epstein files, the FBI investigation into the notorious child sex trafficker with high-profile links. She told Friendly Media his client list was on her desk. She was prepared to release it. But in July last year, the FBI, which comes under Bondi's control, admitted there was no list. That was a strike against her. When questioned about it in Congress, she said it should be more interested in the economy than Epstein.
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it.
All right, everyone, Adam is here. So what just happened, guys? Trump's own hand-picked Attorney General, Todd Blanch, received a direct White House order to halt the Epstein file release and ignored it, authorizing the full unredacted dump of 3.5 million documents, including over 1,200 mentions of Trump and an email from Epstein himself stating, "Trump knew everything."
You said this is the end of the Epstein, of your review of the Epstein files. So just to clarify, is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
I mean, you just baked in an assumption into your question that I have never said and I don't know to be true. Is the public going to learn about men that abuse these girls? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
Trump found out from news alerts on his phone. He rage posted on Truth Social calling Blanche a rat, while 20-plus federal prosecutors resigned in a single day and entire DOJ offices collapsed. All of this while the Supreme Court is seizing White House servers and impeachment articles are advancing. His own protector just blew the vault open.
Today, we are coming on the air with breaking news. President Trump has apparently fired his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, according to a senior administration official and a source familiar with the matter. This comes after NBC News learned that the president has grown frustrated with his Attorney General in recent days, according to multiple sources. I want to get right to our team covering all of it. Our Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is joining us. We've also got our White House correspondent Monica Alba as well. Kelly, let me start with you. This is not altogether surprising, considering the reporting from NBC that the president was frustrated with Bondi's performance leading the Department of Justice.
And we've often seen the president let some of his intentions, feelings, concerns bubble out publicly as one measure of how he makes these decisions. For Pam Bondi, this is a blow because she has been a very loyal sort of friend and ally of the president for a long time, going back to Florida, assisting in the first Trump term. And this, in many ways, comes down to a representation of the frustration that President Trump has.
Let's rewind and understand the anatomy of this betrayal, because the context is everything. After Trump fired Pam Bondi for failing to provide sufficient personal protection, he turned to Blanche. In Trump's mind, this was a foolproof move. Blanche wasn't some institutionalist from the Federalist Society. He was my lawyer. He had defended Trump in the criminal cases. He knew where the bodies were buried.
This is Todd Blanch, and before he was picked to lead and now run the Justice Department, US President Donald Trump was his client.
Well, thank you very much.
He was Deputy Attorney General under Pam Bondi, but now she's out, and Blanche is in.
Sure.
He rose to prominence representing the president in criminal cases which consumed the 4 years between his first and second terms. Blanch began his legal career at the US Attorney's Office in Manhattan, first as a paralegal, then as a federal prosecutor for 8 years. He then entered private practice and defended Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, succeeding in getting a mortgage fraud case against him dismissed. He began representing Trump in criminal cases in 2023, joining his defense team prior to his arraignment in his New York hush money case. Despite being convicted in that case on 34 felony counts, Trump was impressed with Blanche's tenacity.
Trump operated under the assumption that Blanche's loyalty was transactional and absolute. He believed Blanche would do what was necessary to bury the Epstein files, but Trump miscalculated in a way that reveals his fundamental misunderstanding of the law and human nature. Once Blanche assumed the office of Attorney General and was granted access to the full, unvarnished scope of the Epstein files, once he understood the specific legal jeopardy contained within those millions of pages, he faced a choice that Trump could never comprehend. He could choose loyalty to a man, or he could choose fidelity to the law. He chose the law. And that choice became irrevocably public when the White House sent that cease and desist order. This was after the Supreme Court had already ruled, after the server seizures had begun, and after Trump's legal team had descended into a state of absolute panic. They knew Blanche was on the verge of pulling the trigger. They tried to stop him with an official order citing executive privilege and vague national security concerns. But Blanche consulted with the career officials at the department's Office of Legal Counsel, the nonpartisan lawyers who have served through multiple administrations. They advised him that the cease and desist had no legitimate legal basis. The court had already disqualified Bondi's team for conflicts of interest. The Supreme Court had mandated preservation and release. Trump's last-minute demand was just another thread in a tapestry of obstruction. So Blanche ignored it, and at 4 o'clock, he gave the green light. All 3.5 million documents went live on a public DOJ portal, unredacted and complete. And the contents are nothing short of devastating. There is the email from Jeffrey Epstein dated late in the previous year. In it, Epstein responds to inquiries about the alleged Mar-a-Lago ban by stating unequivocally, "Trump knew everything about my activities with his staff. The ban story is false. Trump never banned me. We remain friends." That single paragraph doesn't just contradict Trump's narrative, it annihilates it. Trump has spent years constructing a myth that he was a casual acquaintance who cut ties the moment he sensed something was wrong. Epstein himself, from whatever circle of hell he currently resides in, calls that a lie. And now every voter, every juror, every historian can read it in Epstein's own words because Todd Blanch made it public. Then there is the documentation of the Bannon coordination. Emails between Steve Bannon and Epstein, scheduling of meetings, communications regarding business ventures and political strategy. All of this occurring during the precise period when Bannon was serving as a senior advisor to Trump in the White House. This is not a case of guilt by association. This is evidence of active, ongoing collaboration between a senior White House official and a convicted sex trafficker. And the Musk connections are laid bare in financial disclosures. Money moving between Musk-affiliated entities and Epstein's network. Investments, partnerships, business entanglements that directly contradict Musk's public statements claiming he barely knew the man. Musk was running the so-called Department of Government Efficiency for Trump. He had access to the most sensitive data in the federal government, and he had these financial ties to Epstein. And Trump either failed to vet him or, more likely, simply did not care. And then there are the 1,200 mentions of Trump scattered across the entire document trove. Flight logs, property visit records, business dealings, social calendars. Individually, some are innocuous. Collectively, they paint an undeniable portrait of a long, deep, and intimate relationship that Trump has lied about for years. And he tried to bury all of it, and Blanche just set it free. Trump's response was pure, unadulterated rage. He posted on Truth Social, his words dripping with venom, calling Blanche a rat and a deep state plant. He demanded Blanche be fired immediately, but here is the cruel irony that Trump cannot escape. He can fire Todd Blanch. He probably will fire Todd Blanch, but the files are already out. They have been mirrored, screenshotted, downloaded, and archived. They are being dissected by media organizations, congressional investigators, and state prosecutors. Firing the Attorney General is an act of petty revenge, not a solution. The evidence is now part of the global information ecosystem, and it is destroying Trump's credibility with every passing hour. And then there is the DOJ itself, which is hemorrhaging talent and morale at a catastrophic rate. More than 20 prosecutors resigned in a single day. These are not political appointees who came in with the administration. These are career professionals, men and women who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of justice, who have served under both Republican and Democratic leadership without complaint. They are quitting because they refuse to be part of a criminal enterprise. They refuse to follow orders they know are designed to obstruct justice. The Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office is the canary in the coal mine. It has collapsed. They lack the minimum staffing required to function. As a result, they are dropping major cases. Investigations into complex fraud, violent crime, and public corruption are being abandoned, not because the evidence is weak, but because there is no one left to do the work. And this is not an isolated incident. This pattern is replicating across multiple federal districts. DOJ offices are losing their capacity to enforce federal law because the workforce has rendered a verdict on this administration. They will not be complicit. So Trump is being struck from every conceivable direction. His own attorney general betrayed him in the most public fashion possible. The Supreme Court is actively seizing his administration's servers. The House is moving forward with impeachment. His Justice Department is disintegrating into a state of operational paralysis, and he is powerless to stop any of it. He is watching his entire administration implode in real time, and his only tool is a social media account where he screams into the void. So let's dig deeper into the specifics of Blanche's decision and the ensuing institutional collapse, because this represents more than a single act of defiance. This represents the rejection of Trump by the entire legal establishment. Why did Blanche make this choice? He had been Trump's personal defense lawyer. He was intimately familiar with Trump's legal vulnerabilities and his expectations of a cover-up. But Blanche is also an attorney with a license and a professional oath. As Attorney General, his client is not Donald J. Trump. His client is the Constitution of the United States. He looked at the Epstein files. He looked at the court orders demanding release. He looked at the judicial finding that Bondi's team was disqualified due to conflicts of interest. And he realized that if he followed Trump's orders to bury the files, he would be committing obstruction of justice. That is a felony. He would lose his license to practice law. He would potentially face prison time. So he made the rational, self-preserving, and lawful decision to release them. The timing of Blanche's move was nothing short of strategic genius. He did not act impulsively. He waited until the Supreme Court had spoken. He waited until the High Court had characterized Trump's executive order as textbook obstruction. He waited until the court mandated the preservation of evidence for Congress. At that moment, Blanche had cover. He could stand before the American people and say, "I am not acting as a rogue agent. I am implementing the mandate of the Supreme Court of the United States." Trump cannot effectively argue against the Supreme Court. He can scream about it, but he cannot legally refute it. Blanche timed his move to maximize legal protection and minimize the avenues for retaliation. The cease and desist from the White House was Trump's last desperate lunge for the emergency break. His lawyers drafted an order claiming the files contained national security secrets and were covered by executive privilege. They sent it to Blanche at 3 o'clock, but Blanche did not act alone in a vacuum. He consulted the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel. Those career attorneys informed him that the cease and desist was a legal nullity. Executive privilege does not shield evidence of a crime. There was no national security information in those files, only political dynamite. The order was merely an attempt to obstruct. So Blanche ignored it, and what the public now sees in those files is comprehensive. The Epstein email saying Trump knew everything is the centerpiece. It is Epstein in a communication from late in the previous year telling an associate that the Mar-a-Lago ban narrative was a fabrication. He asserts that Trump never cut ties and that they remained friends. That single document destroys the entire scaffolding of Trump's defense. The Bannon documents are equally damning. Emails between Bannon and Epstein discussing business and political strategy during the time Bannon was serving in the West Wing. This shows that the connection between Trump's inner circle and Epstein was not casual, it was operational. And the Musk financial documents show a web of transactions that belie Musk's claims of ignorance. Musk was financially entangled with Epstein's operations while simultaneously serving as a senior advisor to Trump, and the 1,200 mentions of Trump across the files, flight logs showing visits to Epstein's properties, records of events, business correspondence, create a mosaic of intimacy. They prove that Trump's claims of minimal contact were perjurious lies. The DOJ resignations are a direct and predictable consequence of this corruption. These prosecutors joined the department to uphold the law, not to serve as personal fixers for a president. They saw what was being asked of them: to look the other way, to slow-walk investigations, to protect the president at the expense of justice. And they said no. 20 resignations in a single day is not a statistic. It's a revolt. The Minnesota office collapse is the most vivid illustration of the real-world consequences. Because of Trump's politicization of the department, because the staff has fled, major cases are being dropped. That means actual criminals, fraudsters, violent offenders, corporate polluters will walk free. That is the tangible cost of Trump's corruption. Voters in Minnesota will notice when the federal courthouse goes quiet, and they will know exactly who to blame. Blanche's act of defiance served as a permission structure for these resignations. When prosecutors saw the Attorney General, a man Trump believed was in his pocket, stand up and follow the law, they found the courage to do the same. If the AG can defy Trump and choose the Constitution, they reasoned, then I can at least resign rather than stay and be complicit. And so they left. And the DOJ is collapsing as a result. Trump's characterization of Blanche as a rat is revealing of his entire worldview. In Trump's mind, there is no such thing as rule of law. There is only loyalty and disloyalty. He cannot comprehend that the Attorney General's job is not to protect him personally. He thinks the government is an extension of his own will, and that fundamental misunderstanding is precisely why his presidency is failing. He keeps demanding that people commit crimes for him, and they keep refusing. The connection to the Supreme Court server seizure is critical. The servers being seized contain the communications between the White House and the DOJ. They contain the paper trail of Trump's demands for obstruction. Those internal documents will match and corroborate exactly what Blanche just released. They will show Trump directing the cover-up and his subordinates either complying or resisting. The case against Trump for obstruction of justice is no longer circumstantial. It is documented in triplicate. The impeachment implications are enormous. One of the articles of impeachment passed by the House centers on obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Blanche's release of the files and Trump's frantic attempts to stop it with a cease and desist are proof of that article. The Senate trial will have to contend with the reality that the Attorney General felt legally compelled to defy the president in order to comply with a Supreme Court ruling. That is a devastating narrative for the defense. It makes conviction in the Senate, while still a heavy lift, a much more realistic possibility. For Blanche personally, this was a legacy-defining moment. He could have been a footnote in history as another Trump crony who went down with the ship. Instead, he chose to be the Attorney General who stood up to a corrupt president, released the evidence, and put law above loyalty. He will likely be fired. He may face the wrath of Trump's base, but he retains his law license, his integrity, and a place in history as the man who refused to be a rat in the other direction, the man who refused to rat out the Constitution. Let's synthesize this and focus on what Blanche's defiance and the DOJ collapse mean for the remaining time of this presidency. Blanche's defiance proves that Trump has lost operational control of his own executive branch. If the Attorney General, the one person who is supposed to have the president's back on legal matters, openly defies a direct order and releases evidence the president wanted buried, who else is still listening? The answer is fewer and fewer people. Trump's orders are becoming optional suggestions. That is not how a functioning executive branch operates. That is how a failed state begins to behave. The Epstein files, specifically the Trump knew everything email, obliterate Trump's last remaining defense regarding his relationship with a sex trafficker. He can no longer claim ignorance. The source is Epstein himself. The release is official. The lie is exposed. And voters, especially the suburban voters who decide elections, find this morally repugnant. Defending a man who lied about knowing what Epstein was doing is a political albatross. The mass resignations at DOJ signal institutional collapse. 20 prosecutors in one day is a flood. When a U.S. attorney's office in a major state like Minnesota shuts down and drops cases, that is a systemic crisis. The DOJ is losing the ability to enforce federal law. This is happening because career professionals have decided that working for Trump is incompatible with their oaths. The department is being hollowed out in real time. Trump's rat accusation reveals his authoritarian mindset. He views the government as a protection racket. When someone chooses the law over the boss, they are a traitor. But Blanche was not being disloyal to the country. He was being loyal to the Constitution. The fact that Trump cannot see the difference is why he is losing. The Minnesota office dropping cases demonstrates real-world harm. This is not abstract D.C. politics. This is about justice not being served. Criminals will go free. Victims will be denied their day in court. And voters in Minnesota will hold Republicans accountable for the chaos that caused this collapse. Blanche's timing was impeccable. He used the Supreme Court's ruling as a shield. By waiting for the High Court to mandate preservation and call out the obstruction, Blanche turned his defiance into an act of judicial compliance. Trump cannot easily spin a story where the Attorney General is wrong for obeying the Supreme Court. And here is the most striking element of this entire saga. Todd Blanch was Trump's guy. He was the personal lawyer. He knew the secrets. Trump trusted him with the keys to the kingdom. And yet, when Blanche saw the full, horrifying picture, he recoiled. He chose country over client. He chose the law over the lie. If even someone that close to Trump cannot stomach defending him, what does that tell everyone else? It tells them that Trump is so corrupt that his own inner circle is splintering. So where does this leave the situation? Trump will almost certainly fire Blanche. He has to, for the sake of his own ego. But firing the Attorney General does not delete the files from the internet. The damage is permanent. And whoever Trump appoints next will face the exact same pressures and the exact same legal jeopardy. Finding a qualified lawyer willing to commit obstruction for Trump is becoming harder by the day. The DOJ collapse will continue. More resignations are inevitable. More offices will lose functionality. More cases will be dropped. The federal justice system is being degraded in ways that will take years to repair. In the Senate impeachment trial, Blanche's release and the DOJ collapse will be center stage. They prove the obstruction. They prove the abuse of power. Senators will have to look at the evidence and decide if they are willing to be complicit in defending the indefensible. Even if the Senate lacks the votes to convict, Trump's presidency is functionally over. His DOJ is a shell of itself. His Attorney General humiliated him. The Epstein files have branded him a liar. The Supreme Court is breathing down his neck. The House has impeached him. He is a lame duck presiding over a government in freefall. That is the future Todd Blanch helped create. By choosing law over loyalty, he exposed the rot and accelerated the collapse. And now, everyone can see it. And there is nothing Trump can do to stop it.